Well, welcome to the Daily Wander. We're continuing our series on some of the kayak and paddling opportunities here in the Fairbanks North Pole area. Today we are going out on Piledriver Slough. Piledriver Slough is basically kind of a man-made channelway. It was put back in the day to hopefully keep the floodwaters, the Tanana, from reaching the local Air Force base. So we're gonna go give this a paddle tonight. The water's real high because the flow here is controlled and determined by the Tanana River. And it's really high right now, so it should be a nice little, I guess, float down because there is a little bit of current. And then a nice relaxing paddle back. So we'll get going here in just a minute, loading the boat, getting some stuff ready. We're gonna head out on Piledriver Slough, halfway between North Pole and Eielson Air Force Base. Now, one of the features you've got to get used to on Piledriver is the fact that we are parallel to the Richardson Highway, which goes past Eielson Air Force Base and on down to Delta and so forth. And so there is a certain amount of road noise that happens here. But even with that road noise, you've got such a pleasant little float here. And you're not too far from the road system, which means some people, they choose to simply float down the river, or the stream, or, well, slough in this case, which is a nice gentle, if it's a mile-an-hour current, I'd be shocked. But it also means that you don't have to do that. You can put in up off of what's called Eielson Farm Road, and you can simply float down and enjoy it. And when it comes time to turn around, you can simply turn around. With a very limited amount of effort, you can paddle back upstream to where you're headed. So like any waterway in Alaska, especially the interior, you can expect to find anything and everything out here. There's some actually wonderful grayling fishing here. It is catch and release, so you're not going to be keeping the fish. But they're always kind of fun to play with. We've seen moose out here. We've seen coyotes. There's usually a fair amount of waterfowl out here, which I can see some up ahead of me. So we'll see if we can get a little closer to them in a little bit. But mostly it's just a nice little place to go for an afternoon, or in my case, an evening float and paddle. So about a mile, maybe a little bit over a mile down Piledriver, you come to the junction with Moose Creek. And Moose Creek's a little fairly naturally flowing stream. It comes from actually on the Air Force Base, up a little ways. But when the water's real high, you can actually paddle up a little bit. You can actually get to the bridge that crosses this at the highway. Today the water is high enough, so I'm going to journey up here just a little bit, see what we can see. One time we were actually able to get under the bridge and continue up Moose Creek for quite a ways. We'll see how that works today. But the biggest noticeable difference is Piledriver to this point is actually nice clear water, whereas Moose Creek's pretty dirty water. So where those two come together, there's kind of a junction where the clean and the dirty come together. And it's actually one of the better places to fish for grayling, because the water actually gets a little deeper there, and the grayling love to hide on the edge of that and then come darting out when it's time to find something to eat. So we're going to paddle up Moose Creek a little bit, and then we'll make a decision about whether we're going to continue down Piledriver and maybe do the other half in another video, or potentially continue on and see what we can find. So up the river now, or up Moose Creek for the moment. So after a relatively short paddle, we come up Moose Creek, And we'll actually be able to pass under the Richardson Highway, the two bridges there. Now this is entirely dependent on water levels. The water's low underneath the bridges just because of how it flows. There's a bunch of big rocks and stuff that were left over, probably from construction. And it makes getting past the bridge pretty difficult. In our case today, well, the water's so high that I don't even know if we're going to feel any resistance as we make our way under the bridges. We'll certainly pick up the traffic noise. Just a change of pace. Go up and see how far we can get today. Well, maybe not too far. We'll just probably go past the bridge. And then we'll turn around and continue on our journey. Well, I think we've reached a good turnaround point on today's paddle. We're actually on the back side of what is known as Moose Creek Bluff, which you can see up there, the ridge line. And the cut in the trees, well, that's where the gas line comes from the refinery to bring fuel into the Air Force Base, which is behind me. So we're about 2 miles into the paddle, so about a mile down Moose Creek, and then a mile back up Piledriver to the truck. So I'm not really sure where he is, but he's definitely up in the trees somewhere. So we'll have to look at that footage in a little while and see if we can get an ID on him. He's definitely having an issue about territory somewhere. As I saw another same type of bird fly over about 5 minutes before that. Well, that was a good experience. Not sure what kind of bird of prey that is. We'll figure that out a little bit later. But I was able to kind of figure out two different perches he was flying between. And I don't know if I was just disrupting his day, probably was. But he basically would go from one to another. So, probably about 100-yard paddle for me. Hopefully a few of the pictures turned out. It's getting kind of dark. You know, the video camera, of course, adjusts for that. But when you're taking photos for real, well, we'll see. Hopefully we got some good settings there. Hopefully that's going to work for us. Well, thanks for coming along on the wander today. Real nice paddle. Ended up being more paddling than I anticipated just because, well, that's what I do. And that last mile back up Piledriver, well, just a little slower than it was before. But a good night. We got some beautiful paddling. Got to chase a bird around for a little bit, which always makes me happy. Got a beautiful sunset back there. But a nice day, nice float. The upper part of Piledriver Slough, a little bit of Moose Creek. Till next time, here's the Daily Wander.